welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing a question and answer. So if you have any questions for a future video, please comment them below or send me an email. So jumping right in, our first question comes from Bev. And Bev says, I have an issue with recall. The last time Charley ran, she ended up at the vet overnight from getting into something toxic. I can't trust her now. She has some beagle in her and follows the scents. Is it even possible to train her? She did well when we first got her. So this is super common. You get a new dog, you get a new puppy, and they kind of have that Velcro personality that you are the most important thing in the world to them. For some dogs that doesn't change, for most it does. They start exploring the world around them, start getting farther and farther from you, and in those moments you become a lot less important. So we have to start training recall. And you can start this really young and start it inside the house. We don't often think of our dogs off leash when they're inside, but we want just as much control in the house as we do outside. That if you're in a different room and you say, come, you expect your dog to run to you. A lot of us don't have that, but we expect it or we really want it when we get outside. So with recall, I always recommend training with a remote collar. A lot of people refer to it kind of as an invisible leash, that it gives you that way to check in with the dog even when they're far away and you don't have a physical leash on them. So you start this in the house, very low level training, that you're teaching the dog what that button means. Remote collars aren't used by pressing buttons and shocking dogs into obeying and running back to us. Often you actually get the opposite. You'll have the dog run away from you when you press that button without first teaching the dog what it means. Just because you own a beagle doesn't mean you can't have off-leash recall, but you have to train it. With any breed, you have to train it. Some can be more difficult, but it's not always a breed. It can definitely be a personality thing. But just because you have to compete with that nose doesn't mean you can't have a dog that listens in all situations. But you need to have a way to be consistent. And letting your dog off leash and hoping for the best, or hoping you don't see a dog, or that best smell doesn't pop up, isn't a great way to go about it, because you never know what's coming around the corner. Remote collar can help you with all of that, because when that distraction gets really high, you still have a way of enforcing your rules, a way to follow through, and a way to be consistent. Puppies and dogs, they get in that mindset that they just come back, and then one day they make a different decision, and they very quickly realize we have no way of following through. Often in those situations, you get a lot of that chase me game where you're at your wit's end and the puppy's just running around the yard and you're in full pursuit because you have no other options in that moment, that you start chasing them. And often just hoping that they're gonna come back or that they get tired, or you end up tricking them with a treat. These are not reliable ways to get recall. It's something you have to teach and it's something you have to practice. Remote collar is gonna make that process a lot easier and a lot faster to teach and really, really reliable. And that's going in with a clear goal and a clear plan, that we're not just randomly in the woods and a squirrel runs by and we don't know what to do. We've practiced that again and again, inside, outside, throwing a toy, throwing a treat out of nowhere, and calling our dog back from those things. If you do have a high drive dog or a dog that's easily distracted by smells, then that's the things you want to practice. So if she's using her nose a lot to smell things, then training with food is going to be a really great idea, inside and outside. You have those treats, you have her engaged in that food, but then she's got to switch and she's got to go back into you. So throwing your treat, she's full on running for that treat, the nose is going, and then you're saying come, using that leash and getting her to follow you the other way. Our second question comes from Shera, and it says, our boy is 7 months old and not completely house trained. He recently peed in my bed. How do I stop this? Potty training seems to come really natural for some dogs, and other dogs it's a lot more of a struggle. At 7 months old, you should be able to have really good house breaking at that point in house training. But that doesn't mean it's going to come easy for everyone. In the end, this always comes back to owners. It comes back to giving a lot of freedom to dogs that haven't earned it yet or that don't understand the rules fully. This is why I really believe in crate training, that if you can't have your eyes on the dog, they should be crated, they should be in place, they shouldn't be free roaming around the house. This can cause a lot of behaviors, getting into things they shouldn't be in, chewing on things, or peeing in the house. Dogs aren't peeing in the house to spite us. They're not mad at us and they sneak away to a different room. Often when we're mad at them, that's when we stop paying attention, and that gives them an opportunity to go have an accident in the house. They will also pick bedding because it's a way to hide what they've done. Outside, they're going to pick grass over pavement because they know that the grass is going to absorb everything. So same thing in the house. They're not doing it to be spiteful. They're not peeing on your bed because they think that's the worst place and it's going to make you the maddest. They just pick a place where they want that smell to go away. So you need to add a lot of structure to your dog. If they're frequently having accidents in the house, what are you not catching? I don't believe in training with the bells on the door. I think a lot of dogs take advantage of that they just start ringing the bells to go outside for no reason. And then you don't actually teach a dog to hold its bladder. You just teach a dog to go outside all the time and that it has to pee every time it rings those bells. So get your dog on a schedule. Start by writing down the times you take the dog out. And if there's an accident, document that. Find out why it happened. A lot of times there is a pattern. We just don't always notice. Is it happening at the same time every day? Is it happening when someone gets home? Is it happening when the same person is watching the dog? Get them down to a really good schedule. If that means right now going back to letting the dog out every 3 hours, then start there. Start where you're getting success and then start to build that up. If you're letting the dog outside every hour just because, you're not training them that they're able to hold it, and they truly might have to pee every hour because they've never known otherwise. So start writing down that schedule and teaching your dog that they can hold it, but start where you're getting success. Document it all, write it down, keep really good notes of that, and don't let the dog out of your sight. That might mean crate training. It might mean going back to using the crate a bit more if you had been and you started phasing out. Another good thing is that when you do go outside for a potty break, that's what it's for. If you have a dog that has to go on a 30-minute walk just to pee, you need to start to untrain that. So first thing in the morning, take your dog outside, go to your designated potty spot, give it 5 minutes. If your dog doesn't pee, back in the house, back in the kennel. Try again in a few minutes. You can train your dog to go on command this way. That way you're not waiting that hour, coming back in, and your dog pees because they were outside playing and they forgot to go. You want to make those breaks separate. And if you are going to, go for a big walk, but right now you're struggling with potty training in the house, go out for those 5 minutes, come back in the crate, and then a few minutes later, take your dog out for their walk. Make those a separate occasion just so you can train your dog that there is a difference. A lot of people like using the bells because to them it's a very clear sign that their dog has to go outside. And they say, well, if I don't use the bells, how am I going to know? If you pay attention, you'll know. Dogs will start to sniff more. They will start to go to the door. Sometimes they'll paw at the door. But they do have a change when they have to go out. They are telling us, we're just not always paying attention. So keep your dog in your sight, especially when you're training. I don't believe in a lot of free roaming. I don't want to wonder what my dogs are doing. If I'm cooking in the kitchen, my dogs are in the kitchen holding place with me. They're not wandering around the house getting in trouble. If I can't really focus on them, they're in their crates. So to recap, get your dog on a solid schedule. You want to have a lot of structure, that you know when your dog needs to go out. You know right now that they're having their accidents at hour 4. That you can get ahead of it and start to increase that distance. But if you don't write it down, if you don't keep track of it, you're not going to see those patterns and you're not going to be able to fix it. You're just going to get really frustrated in the moment because you're going to feel helpless. So make sure you have that solid plan in place, get everyone on board with it, and start writing it down. Find out where your dog actually is in their training and what areas you need to improve on. If it's only happening when you're not paying attention, you got to pay attention. If you can't watch the dog 24/7 because it's just obviously not realistic, then your dog needs to be crated when you're not able to watch them, or having them hold a place command. That way they're lying down, they're relaxed. They're likely not going to pee when they're lying down. Start holding them accountable for those things. Take away a lot of that freedom until you get control. You can always add it back in, but until you have a really solid foundation with it, your dog can take advantage of a lot of those things, and you're going to have a lot more bad behaviors that you have to correct. And our next question comes from Zita and Robbie. So we've experienced twice with Journey and a lot with Kolbie. When I hit a rumble strip in the car, Journey shakes and is very scared. Kolbie, on the other hand, is very scared if anything is in the trunk of my SUV and moves. Both dogs leap into Robbie's lap when frightened, and the car is in motion. How should we properly correct this? Fear is a funny thing with dogs, and a lot of times it's very irrational. And we don't always need to know why it's happening. It's possible that in a car one day something fell on the dog and now they're scared of things moving in the car. Or this may never have happened and just the loud noise is bothering them. So it's a situation we have to set up and we have to practice and show the dog how to properly respond through this. So Kolbie is trained on a prong collar, and that's going to be the way that we're going to manage Kolbie. And then Journey is trained on a remote collar. So a bit of different advice for each dog because of the tools that we're using. I would start with both dogs separate, deal with each of these problems separately, let the dog get a good handle on it before you have both dogs in the car. So I actually know Journey and Kolbie really well. I know where they are in their training and what they can be corrected for. If your dog doesn't know a command, you can't correct for it. Because I know Journey and Kolbie both know the command for down, they can be corrected for it. If we're dealing with a bit of fear, we're going to make sure we guide them through it and that we're not just pressing buttons or not just saying no, not just pulling on prong collars. In those moments of fear, we can't correct the fear, but we can correct the obedience. But when they're in that heightened state, we might not get the command as clear as we normally do inside the house. So just keep that in mind when you are correcting, that make sure your dog isn't confused. Make sure you're guiding them through it. That might be adding a leash back on where you normally wouldn't need one and giving some directional guidance through a command. So you want to set it up. By this, I mean you have to practice those situations. Don't wait for them to naturally happen when you're not expecting it, because your timing's not going to be very good. If you go to an empty parking lot and it's a speed bump or it's a change of pace or it's something moving in the car, go to a place where you can safely practice this and have someone else in the car with you. With Kolbie, where you just have the prong collar, it would be a good idea to have someone in the back seat. You want to practice downing in the car. That's where dogs are going to be their safest, is if they're in a down position. If you're allowing them to wander around the car, you're allowing a lot more arousal, a lot more going on in their head, that when things surprise them, they're already in a heightened state to react. So having dogs hold it down in the car, they're not looking at windows, they're not ready to react to as many things. And this you can do just in your driveway. Practice loading your dog into the car and automatic down. And then you can do things, talking, changing the music. And if your dog pops up, you're going to say no, pop on that prong, put them back in a down. And a lot of times you can get dogs to break this down just sitting still. So you can practice this on your own by getting in and out of the car, putting the dog back in the down, or sitting in the back seat with the dog, putting them back in the down. You can do things as well like compressed air, but in those moments, there's not a lot of guidance, that if you do want the dog to go back to that down position, leash guidance and prong is going to be way better than using something like pet correctors or pet convincers from the compressed air. So have someone in the back seat at the beginning, patterning the dog to go right back into that down position when they do have that reaction. Where Journey is actually trained on an e-collar, you can do this from the front seat. Again, go to a safe place, go to a parking lot, go where there aren't cars so that you have a good way to practice and your focus isn't split between driving on the road and correcting the dog. And again, have someone in the passenger seat that they can be doing the corrections. So with Journey, again, set it up, get ready to go over that speed bump, get ready to turn to change your speed, and get ready to correct her on the remote collar. Journey is trained to hold it down in the back car, and that's what she should be doing no matter what. She hasn't been through every situation, so she might need that reminder of how to handle those situations. So get ready when you're about to go over your speed bump. As soon as you notice a change in her, that her ears go up, her breathing changes, that she feels that, right away you're saying no. No means stop doing what you're doing. So you're already interrupting that behavior of standing. You're going to tap on that remote collar on a level that means something to her, a level that is a correction level, and that differs on your dog. So you're going to say no, tap that button. If she goes right back into the down, great. If she doesn't, tell her down. Give her guidance on what to do next. If you're having problems with them physically coming into the front seat, there are harnesses and seatbelts you can get as well that will physically stop that from happening. You still want to train the dog what to do. You don't want them at the end of that seatbelt trying to get in the front seat even though they can't. You can also create almost an invisible barrier between the back seat and the front that, again, practices stationary, but when you're in the front seat, have someone in the back seat with the dog and, talk to the dog, get them excited. And if they try to get into the front seat, correct them. No, pop on that prong. No, correct with the e-collar, put them back in the down. Teach them that no matter what, even if we're getting excited, if we're talking really loudly, if we're gesturing, if there's food, no matter what, you're not allowed to cross that barrier into the front seat. So if you do get scared, if something catches you off guard, there's that barrier there that they're trained not to go over no matter what happens. And that concludes my first Q&A. If you have any questions about the questions I answered today, comment below and I'll try to fill in those blanks to make everything really clear. If you have a question you would like answered, let me know that as well and I'll make another one of these videos. If you do like this video, please give it a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.